Beneath the endless sky, the sea breathes in rhythms older than time itself. Waves roll gently, carrying whispers from worlds hidden below. Legends tell of a fortress, once radiant, now lost beneath the waves. Some say it sank in sorrow, others believe it was embraced by the ocean. But one story rises above the rest, woven with the name Poseidon, the god of the sea, not only a ruler of storms, but a keeper of secrets. He watched over realms unseen, where light bends and silence lingers. There in the depths, a sanctuary remains untouched by human hands. No map reveals it, no compass guides the way. Only the ocean decides. And sometimes, on quiet nights, its voice drifts to the surface. It calls not with thunder, but with a melody soft as salt on the breeze. Those who listen closely may feel its pull, gentle yet unyielding. It is not a call for conquest, but for wonder, for stillness, for truth. The fortress waits, hidden, resting where shadows meet golden light. And in this tale we journey toward it, step by step, breath by breath. For the sea remembers, and tonight it chooses to share its memory. The sea begins with silence, though silence here is never empty, only filled with secrets too soft to hear. Fishermen rise before dawn, their nets heavy, their eyes tired, their hearts steady like the tide. They live with the sea, not above it, not against it, but always alongside its endless will. Among them is an old man, his face carved with years, his voice carrying the weight of countless stories. He speaks of a fortress, not of stone alone, but of coral, pearl, and shimmering glass of the sea. The young listen, half in wonder, half in disbelief, but the old man never bends from his tale. He says the fortress was not lost, but chosen by the water, taken into its heart as a child. No storm could touch it, no flame could reach it, for the sea itself had wrapped it in silence. Legends say Poseidon's hand brushed the walls, leaving currents to guard the gates forever. The fortress, they whisper, is not for gold seekers, nor for those who crave crowns or power. It is for the listener, the dreamer, the one who feels the sea's voice beneath the noise of waves. The old man's eyes shine when he speaks, though they look past the fire, past the shore, into memory. He recalls a night when the moon bent low and the tide carried an echo like a song. It was not a storm, though the air shifted, and the sea spoke in words no tongue could shape. The fishermen call it a myth, a tale for long nights, something to pass between the hours of waiting. Yet when dawn breaks and the boats push forward, each man looks to the horizon with quiet wonder. For in the distance, where the sea grows darker, there is a shadow that moves but never fades. Some say it is only the reef, wide and endless, a trick of light against the deep. But others believe it is the outline of towers, resting patiently beneath the ever-shifting surface. The sea does not give answers, only questions, and the questions ride the tide like driftwood. Children grow on these stories, their dreams soaked with salt and mystery, their nights filled with wonder. Some grow older and forget. Some turn their backs to the waves, but some still feel the pull. The old man is among those who never forgot, for he claims to have seen a shimmer below, a glimmer not of fish nor of coin, but of windows glowing with a light that was not the sun. He tells of a song rising from the depths, not with words, but with a rhythm like breath. It spoke of a gate, a coral arch, waiting for one who listens instead of reaching. The villagers laugh, but their laughter is thin, for each heart carries its own small doubt. What if the fortress is real? What if the sea keeps it for a reason no map can tell? The tale spreads, carried on nets, on sails, on whispers that drift as easily as smoke. And though no one dares to seek it openly, each gaze to the horizon carries a quiet hope. The fortress waits, whether in truth or in myth, guarded not by walls, but by the sea itself. And on certain nights, when the tide is high and the wind is still, the whispers return. They float across the shore, brushing against ears, planting wonder where fear once lived. The old man smiles when he hears them, for he knows the sea remembers more than it reveals. He says Poseidon does not show himself in storms or thunder, but in whispers between the waves. Those whispers, he says, are not warnings, but invitations to step beyond fear into wonder. And so the legend lives, not in books, not in stone, but in the breath of the tide. A tide that carries the memory of a fortress, and perhaps the hand of Poseidon himself. The fortress was once a kingdom, radiant and bright, its towers reaching like fingers toward the morning sun. Walls of coral gleamed in pink and gold, while streets were paved with shells that shimmered beneath the tide. Pearl lamps lit the paths, their glow soft and eternal, casting warmth even in the darkest hours of night. The people lived in harmony, their lives woven with the rhythm of tides and the dance of the moon. They were not kings and soldiers, but builders, singers, and dreamers who listened to the ocean's breath. Their voices joined in song, rising like waves, echoing through arches carved with sea-born art. At the heart of the kingdom stood a great hall, its roof woven with glass and crystal from the sea. It shimmered as if the stars themselves had descended, resting above the heads of those within. Legends say Poseidon would walk among them, not as a god apart, but as a guardian and friend. He brought not storms, but calm, not thunder, but the deep stillness of water at dawn. The people offered no temples of stone, but seashells, songs, and the gentle care of the shore. In return, the sea blessed them with abundance, the nets always full, the waves always kind. But time, as it always does, shifted like sand, and the kingdom began to change. Dreams grew into ambition, ambition into pride, and pride into a hunger that the sea could not feed. Some sought more than harmony. They sought control, desiring to bend the ocean to their will. The songs grew quieter, the seashells fewer, and the shore carried whispers of discontent. Yet even as shadows formed, the fortress still glowed, its beauty untouched, its gates wide open. Poseidon watched, silent, his trident resting not in wrath, but in patience older than stone. When the moment came, the sea did not roar or rage, but simply reached forward like a tide. The fortress sank not with screams, but with silence, as if cradled by the ocean itself. Its towers folded into the waves, its halls welcomed the sea, and its lights faded into blue. But the city did not die. For death is not what the ocean gives. It transforms, it preserves. The coral grew thicker, weaving walls stronger than stone, wrapping the city in eternal embrace. Pearl lamps still glowed, not for the eyes of many, but for those chosen by the sea. Statues stood in stillness, yet their eyes seemed alive, as if they still watched the world above. Songs no longer filled the air, but currents carried their echoes, soft and endless beneath the tide. The kingdom became a secret, hidden where sunlight and shadow meet, safe from human greed. Some say Poseidon placed a veil of currents, a shield that only the pure of heart could pass. Others believe the fortress itself wished to sleep, resting until the world was ready to listen again. No map shows its place, no sailor claims its site, yet the legend endures like the tide itself. The people above speak of treasure, But the treasure is not coin, nor jewel, nor crown. It is wisdom, resting in silence, waiting to be heard by ears that seek more than gold. The sea remembers what the land forgets, holding memory in every wave, in every shifting current. And so the fortress remains, untouched, unseen, yet alive, cradled in Poseidon's watchful care. It is not lost, but preserved, a kingdom of coral and pearl waiting beneath the endless sea. Those who dream may feel its pull, though few dare to follow the whisper that calls them near. For the fortress does not seek seekers, it seeks listeners, those who hear the language of the tide. And perhaps one day, when the world above grows still, its gates will open once more. They say treasures lie beneath the waves, hidden in chests of gold, guarded by shadows and storms. But the sea does not keep jewels, for it has brighter wonders than any gem mined from stone. The true treasure of the fortress was not wealth, but a gift left behind by Poseidon himself. It was said to be a light, a flame that burned without fire, alive within the heart of the city. Some called it wisdom, others called it truth, though no tongue could shape its real name. Legends claimed it glowed softly, pulsing like a heartbeat, steady as the rhythm of the tide. It did not blind the eyes, but opened them, revealing paths hidden beyond the reach of sight. Those who felt its warmth found their fears quiet, their doubts dissolved like foam on the waves. Fishermen told of ancestors who returned from dreams touched by that light, their voices calm. They spoke of hearing the sea more clearly, not as noise, but as music, layered with meaning. The gift was not meant to be owned, but to be shared, like the tide itself, endless and free. Poseidon, they said, placed it there not as treasure, but as a promise to those who listen. It was never guarded by force, but by silence, hidden in depths where greed could not swim. Only those who carried wonder, patience, and humility could feel its glow in their hearts. The fortress itself became a vessel, its coral walls protecting the gift from careless hands. Currents wrapped around it like veils, shimmering and shifting, seen only in fleeting glimpses. The sea creatures, too, became part of the guardianship, their songs echoing through the halls. Dolphins carried melodies of joy, while whales sang of ages older than the stars above. Even the smallest shells seemed to hum, as if touched by the rhythm of the secret flame. Some believed the light was a piece of Poseidon's spirit, a fragment of his eternal watch. Others thought it was born of the ocean itself, a living memory shaped by endless tides. But all agreed it was more than treasure, more than power, more than anything men could own. The old man in the village told this tale with a softness, as though he feared breaking it. He said that when the fortress sank, the light sank with it, resting safe in its coral cradle. But it did not fade, for such a gift could not die. It only waited, pulsing, patient as the sea. The story carried through generations, whispered by fires, sung in lullabies, etched into hearts. Children grew up dreaming of seeing it, not to claim it, but to know what it felt like to hold peace. The fishermen, though hardened by salt and storms, still softened when the story was told. For even the hardest hands longed for a moment of stillness, a gift beyond nets and waves. The sea itself seemed to know when the tale was spoken, its tides gentler, its winds calm. Some nights the moon would paint a path of silver across the water, pointing into the dark. On those nights, villagers wondered if Poseidon still guided seekers toward the hidden light. No one dared to chase it, for they knew it was not meant for those who rushed or demanded. The light would not be found by force nor by pride, but by listening and waiting in silence, and so it remains. The greatest treasure never touched, held deep in the fortress of the sea. A gift not of gold or jewels, but of understanding, a flame that burns only for open hearts. Perhaps one day, when the world quiets enough to listen, the gift will rise again, not to be taken, but to be shared, a light for all who seek harmony with the sea. The call of the ocean does not begin with thunder or storm, but with a whisper too soft to ignore. It stirs in the heart before it stirs in the ear, rising like a tide that no shore can hold back. For one dreamer, young and quiet, the call began on a night when the moon was full and silver. They walked alone by the shore, the sand cool beneath their feet, the waves breathing slow and deep. Each crash of water against stone felt like words unspoken, carried in rhythms older than speech. The air itself seemed alive, humming with something unseen, something vast, something eternal. The dreamer paused, listening, though nothing was clear, only a pull that grew stronger with each wave. It was not fear they felt, but longing, a strange warmth that urged them closer to the water's edge. The tide crept forward, washing over their toes, leaving behind a trace of salt and stillness. And in that moment, they heard it, the whisper of the ocean, soft as breath, deep as memory. It was not a voice in words, but a melody, a sound that wrapped around the heart like a lullaby. The dreamer closed their eyes, and the sea seemed to lean closer, carrying secrets in its song. The song spoke of a place hidden, a fortress sleeping beneath the waves, waiting to be found. It told not of riches, but of light, of wisdom preserved, of harmony waiting to rise again. The dreamer's heart beat in rhythm with the tide, each pulse answering the call of the deep. That night, sleep did not come as it once did, for the whisper lingered even in dreams. The sea filled their mind, not with storms, but with visions of coral gates and glowing halls. Each dream felt real, each sound of water more like a promise than a passing thought. They awoke before dawn, the whisper still alive, as if the tide itself moved within their chest. The village around them stirred with ordinary life, nets prepared, fires lit, voices steady. Yet the dreamer felt apart, their gaze fixed on the horizon where the water met the sky. They could not name what they sought, only that the ocean had asked them to listen. And once the ocean calls, it does not release, for its voice is patient, eternal, unyielding. Days passed, but the whisper did not fade. It grew, weaving itself into every breath, every step. When they walked the shore, the waves seemed to follow, pulling them gently toward the sea. When they closed their eyes, the sound returned, a song of currents winding through the dark. The dreamer began to understand that the call was not for the ears, but for the heart. It was not asking for conquest, nor for treasure, but for trust, for surrender, for listening. The villagers noticed the dreamer's gaze, the way they lingered by the water long after sunset. Some shook their heads, calling it folly, warning of dangers that no sailor should tempt. But the old man smiled knowingly, for he too had heard whispers in the tide long ago. He told the dreamer that the call was rare, a gift, a thread binding soul to sea forever. Few heard it, fewer still followed, but those who did were changed, touched by Poseidon's hand. The dreamer listened with awe, their heart steady, their longing now a fire that would not fade. The ocean waited, patient as always, its gates hidden, its fortress silent, its song eternal. And in the quiet nights, when the stars shone bright, the whisper rose again, gentle, unyielding. It promised not answers, but a journey, Not certainty, but wonder. Not wealth, but truth. The dreamer knew they could no longer turn away, for the ocean had chosen, and so had they. Not all journeys through the sea begin with maps, for some are guided by the living guardians of the deep. The dreamer, restless with the call of the tide, soon found companions where no words were needed. It began with dolphins, their shapes dancing in silver arcs across the moonlit surface of the sea. They swam close, circling with ease, their clicks and whistles forming a language older than men. The dreamer felt no fear, only a sudden joy, as though laughter itself had risen from the waves. The dolphins moved in rhythm, guiding, not pulling, inviting the dreamer into their endless dance. By day, schools of fish glittered like scattered stars, weaving patterns too perfect to be chance. Their scales caught sunlight, scattering it in colors that painted the sea with living rainbows. Each movement felt like a sign, a gentle gesture pointing toward a path hidden from ordinary eyes. The dreamer followed without question, for the sea itself seemed to send its messengers forward. Then came the whales, their voices rolling through the water, deep and resonant as ancient bells. Each note lingered, not just in the ear, but in the chest, shaking the soul awake from silence. Their song spoke of time unbroken, of journeys older than mountains, of patience carved by tides. The dreamer listened, feeling smaller than ever, yet strangely more alive than in any waking day. It was as if the whales carried memory itself, and by hearing, the dreamer borrowed their wisdom. Sea turtles drifted by, steady and calm, their presence as unhurried as the turning of the moon. Their eyes, deep and still, held no urgency, only the quiet strength of eternal travelers. They reminded the dreamer that the sea's path is not rushed, that the journey itself is the gift. Jellyfish, translucent and glowing, pulsed gently through the water, like lanterns lit from within. Their movements were delicate, silent, yet purposeful, forming a trail of light into the dark. The dreamer understood they were not guards of treasure, but guardians of silence and trust. Every creature, from the smallest shrimp to the great shadow of a ray, seemed part of the guide. The ocean was not filled with enemies, but with companions, each carrying a message of its own. The dreamer learned to read these signs, not as commands, but as whispers woven into the tide. Each encounter deepened the bond, weaving a trust between soul and sea that no fear could break. Even the currents seemed alive, wrapping around the dreamer with the softness of guiding hands. They carried the body forward, never harsh, but with a certainty that left no room for doubt. The dreamer began to see the truth. Poseidon had not placed soldiers at the fortress gates. Instead, he had placed guardians of gentleness, teachers who revealed lessons through presence. The dolphins taught joy and play, the whales taught memory, the turtles taught patience. The jellyfish taught stillness, the fish taught unity, each voice part of a greater harmony. The dreamer moved deeper, no longer asking for direction, but simply listening, simply trusting. For every ripple seemed alive, every current deliberate, every creature part of the same song. The sea was not a barrier, but a bridge, carrying the dreamer closer with every breath taken. Above, the stars wheeled in silence, but below, the dreamer found constellations of living light. It was then they understood. The guardians were not blocking the way, but showing it. Their presence was proof that the ocean itself wanted the fortress to be found. And in the stillness between whale song and dolphin laughter, the dreamer's heart grew calm. They were no longer searching alone. They were part of the current, part of the sea itself. The journey was only beginning, but the dreamer knew they had found allies in the deep. For Poseidon's gift was never hidden by force. It was revealed by those who lived within it. The sea has many voices, but none as constant as the whispers carried by the currents of time. As the dreamer drifted deeper, those whispers grew clearer, weaving themselves into gentle patterns. They were not commands nor warnings, but echoes, as if the ocean spoke in memory and song. Each ripple carried fragments of stories, small glimpses of lives that had long faded into water. The dreamer closed their eyes, letting the tide guide them, listening as silence became language. The first whisper spoke of creation, of when the sea was still young, cradling the birth of light. It told of coral that grew like flame, of shells that sang when touched by the hand of dawn. The dreamer felt awe, sensing not myth but truth, etched into the waves like breath into air. Another whisper rose, deeper, older, as if spoken by mountains that had fallen beneath the tide. It told of harmony between land and water, when humans walked gently and gods listened kindly. There was no fear in this tale, only balance, a rhythm between worlds that shared the same sun. But then came a softer tone, carrying sorrow like sea foam dissolving at the edge of sand. It told of greed, not with anger, but with sadness, of a fortress built high and proud. The people who built it sought wisdom, but over time, they closed their hearts to the sea. The fortress grew stronger, taller, but its walls turned away the tide, silencing the ocean's song. And when silence grew too heavy, the sea embraced the fortress, not in rage but in mercy. It sank slowly, gently, until stone met coral and windows faced the endless blue. The whispers told that Poseidon watched, not to punish, but to preserve what could not be lost. He carried the fortress into his realm, keeping it safe until balance could return again. The dreamer listened, their heart trembling, for the ocean did not speak of ruin, but of care. It was not destruction they heard, but transformation. Sorrow turned into protection. The whispers swirled around them, sometimes faint, sometimes strong, always pulling them closer. They spoke of voices that still lingered, of souls who had chosen to remain with the sea, not trapped, not broken, but living as guardians, woven into current and coral, eternal and free. The dreamer felt no fear, only wonder, for the sea was alive with memory and kindness. Every shadow was not emptiness, but presence. Every current carried someone's gentle trace. The deeper they swam, the louder the whispers became, though never harsh, always soft as mist. It felt like being carried through a library of water, each shelf holding a fragment of truth. The dreamer touched a shell, and in it heard laughter, a family who once lived by the shore. They brushed a strand of kelp, and it sang with echoes of dances, festivals long forgotten. Even the rocks beneath bore memory, etched with tides that had kissed them for endless years. The dreamer realized the fortress was not a place of stone alone, but a vessel of remembrance. It carried the weight of stories, preserved not in books, but in currents and in song. The whispers grew warm, carrying a final message, clear as light breaking through the surface. Listen, and you will find. Trust, and you will see. The sea keeps what the heart must know. The dreamer opened their eyes, and the waters shimmered, alive with threads of unseen voices. They were not lost in the deep. They were walking through memory itself, step by step. And ahead, where the whispers gathered strongest, the promise of the fortress began to glow. The dreamer breathed, not with fear, but with trust. ready to follow where memory would lead. For the sea had spoken, and its song was a guide, carrying them deeper into Poseidon's realm. The deeper the dreamer swam, the more the sea revealed shapes carved not by nature, but by hand. Walls of coral gave way to patterns too precise, arches too deliberate to be born of chance. Stone lay hidden beneath centuries of tide, softened by moss, yet strong against the endless waves. It was the first glimpse of the fortress, a shadow of a kingdom resting where sunlight thinned. The dreamer paused, heart racing, not from fear, but from awe at the sight before their eyes. Columns rose like trees of marble, their tops hidden in curtains of kelp, swaying slow as breath. Windows gaped open, but within them glimmered faint light, as though stars lived beneath the sea. Fish darted in and out of doorways, weaving patterns through halls that once held voices of men. The silence was not empty. It was filled with presence, a weight of time too vast to measure. The dreamer reached out, fingers brushing the stone, feeling warmth where cold should have been. It was as if the fortress remembered, holding the touch of every hand that had built its frame. Carvings still lingered, though worn by waves, telling of sun, sea, and the hands of gods. Faces stared from the stone, not grim, but serene, their eyes half closed, as if still in prayer. Each wall spoke of purpose, of lives devoted not to power, but to seeking balance with the sea. The dreamer wandered deeper, through broken gates now crowned with coral and anemones. Every corner felt alive, not ruined, but transformed, as though the ocean itself had adopted it. Hallways stretched like rivers, their floors of stone softened by drifting sands and shells. Statues leaned in silence, their arms extended as if still offering blessings to those who came. The dreamer felt no sense of loss here, only continuity, a place alive with memory and care. Even the light behaved differently, filtering through cracks to paint the walls with living gold. It was not a ruin, but a sanctuary, guarded by silence and crowned with the patience of time. The fortress seemed to breathe, its chambers alive with the slow pulse of the sea itself. The dreamer closed their eyes, listening, and again the whispers rose, louder in these walls. They spoke of scholars who once gathered here, seeking truth not for conquest, but for harmony. They spoke of music played in the courtyards, flutes and drums mingling with waves and gulls. They spoke of gardens where children laughed, their steps echoing against fountains now gone. And then, softer, they spoke of stillness, of the day the fortress surrendered to the sea. No cries of terror, no struggle, only a yielding, as stone gave way to tide with gentle peace. The dreamer opened their eyes and wept, for the fortress was not a tomb. It was a prayer kept. Every stone was a word, every carving a voice, every hall a verse in the ocean's hymn. The dreamer wandered deeper, guided not by sight alone, but by a pull from within the heart. Each step felt like entering a story, one written long ago, but waiting to be read anew. The fortress welcomed them, not as a stranger, but as a listener, one chosen to remember. And as the dreamer reached the heart of its halls, the whispers grew into a chorus of light. It was there, in the stillness, that the true presence of Poseidon stirred, waiting to be revealed. The heart of the fortress was unlike any other place the dreamer had seen beneath the sea. It did not open with grandeur, but with stillness, a chamber where silence felt alive and vast. Pillars rose like guardians, wrapped in coral, their stone surfaces glowing with faint silver light. The floor shimmered with sand that moved as though stirred by breaths too deep to hear. In the center stood a great basin, carved from stone, filled not with water, but with light itself. The glow rippled like liquid, shifting in colors that mirrored the dawn, soft and eternal. The dreamer approached slowly, their heart pounding, each step echoing like a promise in the deep. When they touched the edge of the basin, the whispers hushed, replaced by one vast presence. It was not a voice of thunder, but of depth, slow and steady as the ocean's endless tides. Poseidon was not seen, yet his presence filled every drop of water, every grain of sand. The dreamer felt small yet safe, as though standing inside the very breath of the sea itself. Then the basin stirred, and within it rose visions carried on waves of living light. They saw the fortress as it once was, radiant, filled with song, laughter, and wisdom. They saw gardens blooming, children playing, scholars gathering in courtyards to share truth. They saw the day silence fell, when the sea came, not to destroy, but to cradle the fortress. The light rippled again, showing lives that had remained, souls who became guardians of the deep. Their forms shimmered as currents, as rays of light, as the voices woven into the tides. The dreamer trembled, not with fear, but with awe at the beauty and sorrow intertwined. Poseidon's presence deepened and words formed, though they were not spoken but felt. "You have listened," the presence said, "and those who listen may see what others do not." The dreamer bowed their head, humbled, their heart open like a shell beneath the tide. "This place is not lost," the voice continued. "It is kept until the world remembers balance." The dreamer understood then that the fortress was never a ruin, but a promise preserved. It was not a warning against pride, but a reminder of harmony, of listening to the sea. The basin glowed brighter, and the dreamers saw themselves reflected in its shifting light. Not as they were, but as part of the sea, their form blending with currents and glowing waves. They realized the ocean had chosen them, not to own the fortress, but to carry its song. The presence of Poseidon lingered, vast yet tender, patient as the eternal turning of tides. "You are not alone," it said, "for every creature, every current, every star above walks with you." The dreamer wept softly, their tears vanishing into salt, merging with the sea that embraced them. The chamber brightened, the whispers returned, now softer, harmonizing like a chorus of memory. The statues seemed alive, their faces glowing, their hands reaching not for power, but for peace. The fortress itself felt awake, breathing in rhythm with the dreamer, alive with light once more. The dreamer placed their hand into the basin, and warmth spread through them like rising dawn. Visions of journeys yet to come unfolded, paths across seas where stories still slept. The dreamer saw not treasure, but responsibility, to remember, to carry, to share what was kept. The light faded slowly, returning to its quiet shimmer, but the dreamer's heart remained alight. They turned from the basin, ready to walk deeper, carrying Poseidon's gift within their soul. The fortress had revealed its heart, not in stone or riches, but in truth too vast to lose. And as the dreamer left the chamber, the sea itself seemed brighter, carrying them onward. For once you have listened to the ocean's heart, you are never again only of the land. The dreamer left the chamber, their heart alight with the gift of Poseidon. Yet the fortress was not finished speaking. Corridors stretched ahead, lined with carvings that glowed faintly as if awakened by their presence. The light followed them, not bright, but soft, guiding their steps deeper into the fortress's hidden heart. Every surface seemed alive, whispering memories of those who once walked these halls with reverence. The dreamer reached a wide passage, where the walls curved inward, shaped like the inside of a shell. The sound of the sea grew louder here, echoing as though the ocean itself sang through the stone. At the end stood a doorway without doors, its frame woven with coral, moss, and threads of pearl. Beyond it, a vast hall opened, more magnificent than anything the dreamer had ever imagined. The ceiling arched like the sky itself, covered in mosaics that shimmered with shifting ocean colors. Each tile caught the faint light and moved like waves, painting the story of sea and sky together. The floor was smooth as glass, reflecting not the room itself, but scenes of the world above. The dreamer saw forests swaying, mountains rising, rivers winding, all living in harmony. It was as if the fortress held the memory of the earth entire, preserved beneath the waves. In the center of the hall stood a circular dais, carved with spirals that led toward its heart. The dreamer stepped upon it, and the spirals began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with the sea. The air shimmered, and once again the presence of Poseidon filled the hall with quiet gravity. "You walk further," the presence said, "and each step is a bond with what must be remembered." The dreamer knelt, not from command, but from reverence, sensing the weight of time around them. The spirals on the dais brightened and visions unfolded, not of the past, but of the present. They saw distant shores where the sea raged, not from anger, but from imbalance, unheeded. They saw rivers choking, skies clouding, creatures wandering in search of what was lost. The dreamer's chest tightened, for these visions were not myths, but truths still unfolding now. Poseidon's voice grew softer, carrying both sorrow and unshakable patience, like waves that never cease. "The world forgets to listen," the presence said. "Yet the sea does not forget to speak." The dreamer reached toward the spirals, feeling warmth spread, as if the ocean's pulse was their own. They whispered, "What must I do?" Though no sound left their lips, only a thought carried forward. The sea answered with stillness, then with words that were more feeling than sound. "You must carry the song," the voice said, "for songs are seeds that awaken in listening hearts." The dreamer understood then that their journey was not for treasure, but for remembrance. The fortress was a sanctuary not just of stone, but of truth, waiting for a listener to carry it. The mosaics on the ceiling shifted, revealing stars mingling with waves, sky meeting sea. It was a reminder that nothing lived alone. Each part of the world was woven with the other. The dais dimmed, and the vision faded, leaving only the soft glow of stone and coral. The dreamer rose slowly, feeling lighter, yet carrying the vastness of what they had seen. The hall did not close behind them, but lingered open, as if blessing their steps forward. The corridors ahead shimmered with light, calling them deeper still, where greater truths waited. The dreamer walked on, no longer uncertain, for each step was guided by the ocean's song. The fortress had revealed not only its heart, but its purpose, and the dreamer was now its vessel. And though the sea remained vast and full of mystery, the dreamer no longer felt alone in its depth. The dreamer walked further, guided by the glow of walls that pulsed like veins carrying the ocean's breath. The fortress was alive, not in the way of flesh, but in rhythm, as if stone had learned to dream. Every turn revealed another marvel, each corridor carrying the hush of forgotten voices. The dreamer entered a chamber shaped like a circle, its walls covered in mirrored stone. When they stepped inside, their reflection rippled, not like glass, but like a pool of water. The figure that looked back was both themselves and something more, woven with strands of light. whispers rose again, but now they formed words that echoed with startling clarity. "This is the chamber of remembrance," the voice said, "where the sea holds what the world forgets." The dreamer touched the wall, and the reflection shifted, unfolding visions like petals on a tide. They saw sailors long ago who prayed for safe passage and left offerings of shells and pearls. They saw families on distant shores singing songs that called to the sea for guidance. They saw storms that carried ships away, yet the sea cradled their memories, not their wreckage. The chamber was not a hall of loss, but of keeping, where all stories found a place to rest. The dreamer's reflection grew brighter, until it was no longer an image, but a flame of memory. They felt a weight inside their chest lift, as though the sea had gathered their burdens. The presence of Poseidon filled the chamber once more, calm and steady as a tide at dawn. "You see now," the voice said, "that nothing is ever truly lost when it is given to the sea." The dreamer closed their eyes, tears rising, not of grief, but of release, like rivers joining the tide. The mirrored walls glowed, carrying their reflection outward, merging it with countless others. It was a reminder that every life, every whisper, added to the chorus that the ocean sang. The dreamer stepped back, watching their reflection dissolve into the wall, becoming one with all. The chamber dimmed softly, leaving only a faint shimmer where the visions had once bloomed. The dreamer understood they had been entrusted not with answers, but with memory itself. They were to carry it forward, not as a keeper of secrets, but as a voice among voices. As they left the chamber, the corridors seemed warmer, as though the sea itself walked beside them. The path curved upward, leading them to a dome crowned with crystal windows. Through them streamed light from the surface, fractured into rivers of color across the floor. The dreamer stood beneath it, arms open, feeling the ocean above and the fortress below. They realized then that the fortress was not buried or broken, but a bridge between worlds, a place where sea and land, memory and future, silence and song were forever joined. Poseidon's voice returned, gentler now, like a tide retreating but leaving treasures in its wake. "You are not here to take," the voice said, "but to listen, to carry, and to give in turn." The dreamer breathed deeply, each breath mingling with salt, light, and the echoes of eternity. The dome shimmered brighter, then faded, leaving behind only the steady glow of coral paths. The dreamer stepped onward, filled not with questions, but with a certainty that grew like dawn. They had become a vessel not just of the fortress, but of the ocean's unbroken song. And as the walls shifted around them, the fortress opened another way, deeper into its soul. The journey was not ended, for greater revelations still waited in the silence of the deep. The fortress grew quiet as the dreamer reached its final chamber, a place where the sea itself seemed to pause. The walls shimmered faintly, as though holding their breath, waiting for the last truth to be spoken. In the center stood no statue, no basin, only a circle of stone polished smooth by time. The dreamer stepped into it, and the chamber filled with light, soft as dawn, deep as the ocean floor. Poseidon's presence unfolded once more, vast yet tender, surrounding the dreamer like a tide. "You have walked where few have walked," the voice said, "and you have listened where most turn away." The dreamer's heart swelled, not with pride but with humility, knowing they were only one among many. The sea did not ask for power, nor demand worship, but only remembrance, only balance. Visions rose once more, not of the past, but of paths stretching forward like rivers to the horizon. The young dreamer saw coastlines bright with life, forests meeting oceans, skies clear and unbroken. They saw people learning again to listen, to treat the sea not as an enemy but as a companion. And they saw themselves among them, carrying the fortress's song wherever their steps would lead. The chamber glowed brighter, and the fortress itself seemed to breathe, its purpose fulfilled in silence. "You will return to the world above," Poseidon's voice whispered, "but you will not return unchanged." The dreamer nodded, tears drifting upward like pearls, merging with the water around them. The fortress began to fade, not vanishing, but folding back into the sea's endless embrace. The corridors dimmed, the statues closed their eyes, the mosaics stilled into quiet stone. Yet none of it felt like loss. It was only the sea keeping its secrets once more. The dreamer felt themselves rising, carried upward by currents gentle as a guiding hand. They passed through arches of coral, through halls now hushed, through gates crowned with anemones. The ocean brightened, light growing stronger, until the surface shimmered above like liquid sky. The dreamer broke through, gasping, but their breath was filled with salt, memory, and song. The horizon stretched wide, unchanged, yet utterly different. For their eyes now carried the ocean's truth. They drifted upon the waves, feeling the heartbeat of the sea beneath them, steady and kind. The whispers did not vanish. They lingered, softer now, woven into wind and tide. The dreamer knew the fortress was not gone, only waiting, only resting, until the world was ready. Its gift was not for one alone, but for all who listened, for all who opened their hearts to the sea. As the sun rose, its light spilled across the water, golden and endless, a mirror of the dawn below. The dreamer whispered thanks, not to claim, but to honor, letting the words drift with the waves. They turned toward the shore, carrying the ocean's hymn within, knowing it would guide every step. For the fortress had not chosen them to rule, but to remember and to share what was kept. The sea shimmered, alive with promise, each wave a verse, each tide a prayer unending. And as the dreamer returned to the world of land and sky, they carried the silence of the deep. A silence that was not empty, but full, waiting to be heard by those who would listen. The journey was complete, yet also only beginning, for the fortress lived wherever memory endured. And in that truth, the dreamer understood the song of Poseidon would never fade.